I still remember the exact moment I realized I would never be good enough for my parents. It was my 25th birthday, and I'd just gotten promoted to senior analyst at my company, a position that came with a six-figure salary and stock options. I'd rushed home, practically bursting with excitement to share the news. When I walked through the door, I found my parents in the living room, hunched over Steven's laptop, helping him fill out community college applications. My younger brother, who at 22 had already dropped out of 3 different schools, was getting their undivided attention, again. "Mom, Dad, I have amazing news," I announced, still riding the high of my achievement. My mother barely glanced up. "Not now, Roger. We're helping Steven with something important." Important. That word echoed in my mind as I stood there, promotion letter still clutched in my hand. Everything Steven did was important. Every minor accomplishment of his was celebrated like he'd just cured cancer. Meanwhile, I could have walked on water, and they'd ask why I couldn't fly. Growing up, the favoritism wasn't always obvious. It started small, Steven getting the bigger slice of cake, the newer clothes, the extra 5 minutes of bedtime stories. But as we got older, the gap widened into a chasm I could never cross. When I graduated high school with honors, my parents took us to Denny's. When Steven barely scraped by with a C average, they threw him a party and bought him a car because he tried so hard. I funded my own way through college, working 3 jobs while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. Every semester I'd hear the same refrain: "We're so proud of you, Roger, but we need to focus on Steven right now. He needs more support." Support meant money, time, attention, everything I'd learned to live without. I became self-sufficient out of necessity, not choice. The thing about being the overlooked child is that you develop a peculiar kind of strength. You learn to validate yourself because external validation never comes. You celebrate your wins alone and nurse your wounds in silence, but that strength comes with a price, a growing resentment that sits in your chest like a stone, getting heavier with each passing year. Steven's failures were always reframed as learning experiences or finding himself. When he crashed the car they bought him, the 3rd accident in 2 years, my parents said he was just going through a rough patch. And I mentioned I'd been saving for a down payment on a house. My father's response was to ask if I could loan Steven money for his latest business venture, a food truck that never materialized beyond Instagram posts and empty promises. The pattern was always the same. Steven would have a grand idea, my parents would throw money at it, and I'd watch from the sidelines as another $1,000 disappeared into the void of his potential. The pottery studio that closed after 2 months, the clothing line that never produced a single shirt, the cryptocurrency investment that turned out to be a scam even I could have spotted from a mile away. "You don't understand," my mother would say, whenever I tried to point out the obvious. "Steven just needs to find his path. Not everyone can be like you, Roger. Like me, responsible, reliable, invisible." The truth was, I'd become the family's safety net without anyone asking. When my parents' mortgage went underwater, guess who they called? When Steven needed bail money after a DUI, who did they turn to? When unexpected medical bills piled up, whose savings account got drained? Mine, always mine. And the thanks I got was a pat on the head and a reminder that family helps family. But help was a one-way street in our house. When I was struggling through my MBA program, working full-time while studying, no one offered to help with my rent. When I got sick and needed surgery, I took an Uber to the hospital because my parents were at Steven's band's gig, a band that played exactly 3 shows before imploding. The weekend, everything changed started innocently enough. My mother called on a Thursday evening, her voice unusually cheerful. "Roger, we're having a little get-together this Saturday for Steven. Nothing fancy, just family. You'll come, won't you?" I should have known something was up. My parents never called me for little get-togethers. Family events were usually communicated through group texts where I was an afterthought, added at the last minute with a, "Oh, and Roger, you're invited too if you're free." Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you think maybe things will be different this time. I'd even bought a nice bottle of wine, the expensive kind my father pretended to know about but actually had no clue. As I pulled up to my childhood home, I noticed the street was packed with cars. This was no little get-together. Walking through the front door, I was hit by a wall of noise and the smell of catered food. The living room had been transformed with balloons, streamers, and a huge banner that read, "Congratulations, Steven, college graduate." My stomach dropped. Steven had graduated? From where? The last I'd heard, he dropped out of his 4th attempt at community college 6 months ago. But there he was, center of attention, wearing a cap and gown, surrounded by relatives I hadn't seen in years. "Roger," my Aunt Martha spotted me first. "Isn't it wonderful? Steven finally did it. Your parents must be so proud." I forced a smile, my mind racing. Had I missed something? Had Steven actually gone back and finished? As I made my way through the crowd, snippets of conversation reached me. Took him 6 years, but he made it. His parents never gave up on him. Such an inspiration. Finally, I found my mother in the kitchen, arranging appetizers on a platter. "Mom, Steven graduated? From where? When?" She beamed at me. "Online certificate program in digital marketing. 8 whole weeks, and he stuck with it. Isn't it amazing?" 8 weeks. They'd thrown a party, a catered party with at least 50 people for an 8-week online certificate. The same parents who'd given me a gift card to Applebee's when I got my MBA. "Where am I sitting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. My mother waved vaguely toward the dining room. "Oh, we ran out of chairs at the main table, but there's space in the kids area in the den." The kids area. I was 28 years old with a master's degree and a 6-figure job, and they wanted me to sit at the kids' table while Steven held court with the adults. Something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. I stood in that kitchen, watching my mother fuss over the appetizer arrangement, and felt a strange calm wash over me. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life, detached, analytical, clear. "You know what, Mom? I brought Steven a graduation gift," I said, pulling out my phone. Her face lit up. Oh, Roger, that's so thoughtful. Steven will be thrilled. I'd actually ordered something weeks ago when I'd first heard whispers about Steven going back to school. It was a top-of-the-line laptop, the kind creative professionals used, because despite everything, some stupid part of me still hoped that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this achievement, however small, would be the turning point. The laptop had cost me nearly $2,000. Actually, I said, fingers moving across my phone screen, I'm going to give him something even better. I canceled the order right there, in front of my mother. The confirmation email popped up immediately. Your order has been successfully canceled. Refund will be processed within 3 to 5 business days. What are you doing? My mother's voice had shifted from warm to confused. Giving Steven what he really deserves, I replied, putting my phone away. My absence. I walked into the living room, where Steven was regaling our cousins with stories about his intense academic journey. He looked up as I approached, his smile faltering slightly. Steven always knew, on some level, how things really were. He wasn't stupid. He was comfortable. Hey, bro, he called out, a little too loudly. Glad you could make it to my big day. Congratulations on your certificate, Steven, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. 8 weeks is something. The silence stretched. Our relatives shifted uncomfortably. My father appeared from somewhere, his jaw already set in that defensive position I knew so well. Roger, he warned. No, Dad, let me finish. I turned back to Steven. I had a gift for you, a really nice laptop, $2,000, but I realized something. You don't need my gifts. You have everything you need right here. All these people celebrating your every minor achievement. Parents who'll drop everything for you. A safety net that never goes away. My mother rushed over, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Roger, this is not the time or place. When is the time, Mom? When is it ever the time to talk about how you had 2 sons but only ever saw one? The room was dead silent now. Even the kids in the other room had stopped playing. Steven stood up, his graduation cap sliding slightly on his head, making him look even more ridiculous. Dude, what's your problem? Steven said, trying to play it cool, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. If you're jealous... Jealous? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of what? Your 8-week certificate? Your 5th attempt at finding yourself? No, Steven, I'm not jealous. I'm done. My father stepped forward, his voice booming in that way that used to make me shrink as a kid. Roger, you're being cruel. Your brother worked hard for this. 8 weeks, Dad. 8 weeks. I worked 3 jobs for 4 years to get through college. I studied for 2 more years to get my MBA while working full-time. Where was my party? Where were the relatives? Where was the catered food? You're different, my mother said, and there it was, the phrase that summed up my entire existence in this family. You've always been independent. Steven needs more support. Support, I repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like enabling. How many failed ventures have you funded? How many times have you bailed him out? And what do you have to show for it? An 8-week certificate that probably cost you $500? Steven's face was red now. At least I'm trying to find myself. You're 24, Steven. Most people have found themselves by now, or at least found a job. The gasps from the relatives were audible. Aunt Martha looked like she might faint, but I wasn't done. Years of silence had built up a pressure that demanded release. You want to know something funny? I continued, looking directly at my parents. Last month, my company promoted me to vice president, youngest VP in the company's history. My salary doubled. I'm managing a team of 30 people and overseeing projects worth millions, and I didn't even tell you because I knew you'd find a way to make it about Steven. Either you'd ask me to hire him, or you'd use it as an opportunity to remind me that success isn't everything, while Steven is rich in other ways. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. My father's face had gone from red to purple. That's enough, he growled. You're ruining your brother's special day. His special day, I repeated. Every day is Steven's special day. Every failure is a learning experience. Every minimal effort is a Herculean achievement. And every time he needs money, or a place to crash, or someone to clean up his mess, you're there. But when I needed you, when I was scared and alone in the hospital, when I was struggling to make rent during college, where were you then? We knew you could handle it, my mother said quietly, and in that moment, I think she finally heard how it sounded. I was 19, Mom, 19 and having surgery. I handled it because I had no choice. No. Steven threw his graduation cap on the ground. So what, you want a medal for being successful? Some of us aren't perfect like you. I never wanted to be perfect, I shouted, surprising myself with the emotion that broke through. I just wanted to be seen, to matter as much as you do, to have my achievements celebrated instead of dismissed, to have my struggles acknowledged instead of ignored. The room was thick with tension. Relatives were slowly starting to edge toward the door, mumbling about needing to leave early. The party was effectively over, but I had one more thing to say. You know what the saddest part is? I kept hoping. Every achievement, every milestone. I thought maybe this time they'll see me, but it was never enough. I was never enough. And I'm done trying to be. I turned to leave, but my father grabbed my arm. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I looked at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike but missed my college graduation because Steven had a court date. The man who'd never once said he was proud of me without adding a but about Steven. I haven't been welcome here in years, Dad. You just never noticed. I pulled my arm free and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard my mother start to cry, Steven cursing, my father yelling about ungrateful children, but I kept walking. The next few weeks were a blur of blocked calls and ignored texts. My parents tried everything: anger, guilt, manipulation. My mother left voicemails sobbing about how I destroyed the family. My father sent texts about how disappointed he was in my behavior. Steven, predictably, posted passive-aggressive memes on Facebook about toxic people and choosing your real family. But something unexpected happened. Relatives started reaching out to me privately. Aunt Martha called to say she'd noticed the favoritism for years, but hadn't wanted to interfere. My cousin Jake admitted he'd always wondered why I was treated differently. My grandmother, who'd been too frail to attend the party, told me she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. I tried to talk to your mother about it years ago, she confided, but she insisted you were fine, that you preferred being independent. I should have pushed harder. 3 months passed. I focused on work, started therapy, and began building a life that didn't revolve around seeking approval I'd never get. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked and said I had an urgent family call. My stomach clenched. Had something happened? Despite everything, the programming to be the responsible one kicked in. I took the call. It was my mother, and she sounded different, older, tired. "Roger, we need your help." Of course they did. "Steven's in trouble," she continued, and I almost laughed at the predictability of it. He took money from his employer. They're threatening to press charges unless we pay it back. "How much?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. $50,000. I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. 50,000. Steven had stolen $50,000. He was going to invest it, my mother explained quickly. He found this opportunity online, and he thought he could triple the money and return it before anyone noticed. But it was a scam, and now you want me to bail him out. You're the only one who can, Roger. Your father and I, we've already mortgaged the house for his previous situations. We have nothing left. There it was. They'd literally bet their house on Steven and lost. No. The word hung in the air between us. "Roger, please. He could go to prison. This will ruin his life." "Steven ruined his own life, Mom, and you helped him do it by never letting him face consequences. How can you be so cold? He's your brother." "Yes, he's my brother, the one who got everything while I got nothing, the one who was celebrated for the bare minimum while I was ignored for exceeding every expectation, the one who stole $50,000 because he thought he was smarter than everyone else. We'll pay you back," she pleaded. "With what? You just said you have nothing left." The silence stretched until she finally said what I'd been waiting to hear my whole life. "We were wrong, Roger. We see that now. We should have treated you better. But please, don't punish Steven for our mistakes." "I'm not punishing anyone, Mom. I'm just not enabling him anymore. You created this situation by never saying no to him, by always cushioning his falls. Maybe it's time he learned what the real world is like. If you don't help, we'll lose everything," my mother said, her voice breaking. "The house, our retirement savings, everything. You already lost everything, Mom. You just used it to fund Steven's fantasy life instead of saving it." I heard my father's voice in the background. Then he got on the phone. "Roger, stop being vindictive. Family helps family." "Family," I repeated. "Tell me, Dad, what family? The one where one son gets everything and the other gets nothing? The one where my achievements are dismissed and Steven's failures are celebrated? That family? We made mistakes." "No, Dad, you made choices. Every day for 28 years you chose Steven, and now you want me to pay for those choices? Where was this family helps family mentality when I needed you? That's different." "It's not different. It's exactly the same. You're asking me to sacrifice my financial security for Steven, just like I've been sacrificing everything else my whole life. Well, I'm done being the family ATM. So you're just going to let your brother go to prison?" "Steven, let Steven go to prison when he decided to steal $50,000. Actions have consequences, Dad. It's time he learned that." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from anger, from relief, from finally saying no. The calls didn't stop. Other relatives got involved, trying to mediate. Some understood my position, others thought I was being heartless, but I held firm. I'd spent years building my financial stability, and I wasn't going to throw it away for someone who'd never appreciated anything I'd done. A week later, Steven called me directly. It was the first time we'd spoken since the party. "Roger, please, I'm scared." His voice did sound scared, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered all the times I'd been scared and alone. "I'm sure you are, Steven. I'll pay you back, every penny. I'll get a job, a real job. I'll change. You've been saying you'll change for years. The only thing that changes is the price tag of your mistakes. You're really going to let me go to prison? Your own brother?" "I'm not letting you do anything, Steven. You did this to yourself. For once in your life, you have to face the consequences without someone swooping in to save you." "I hate you," he said, his voice venomous. "No, Steven, you hate that I'm not playing my assigned role anymore. The reliable brother who fixes everything while expecting nothing in return." I hung up. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Steven's employer pressed charges. My parents did lose their house trying to pay for his legal defense. They moved into a small apartment, their retirement savings gone. Steven got 3 years in prison, reduced to 18 months with good behavior. And me? I was free. The guilt came in waves at first. Years of conditioning don't disappear overnight. But my therapist helped me understand that I wasn't responsible for their choices. I'd offered them a mirror, showing them the reality of their favoritism, and they'd chosen to smash it rather than look at their reflection. Some relatives cut me off completely. Others quietly supported my decision. My grandmother passed away 6 months later, but not before telling me she was proud of me for breaking the cycle. "Your parents loved Steven more, but they needed you more," she said during our last conversation. "They just never realized those aren't the same thing." 2 years have passed since that graduation party. I heard through the grapevine that Steven was released early and is living with our parents in their cramped apartment. He's working at a call center, the first real job he's ever had. My parents are both working past retirement age to make ends meet. They sent me a Christmas card last year. Inside, my mother had written, "We miss you. We're sorry. Please come home." Home. As if that house full of inequality and dismissal had ever been my home. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. Some patterns, once broken, should never be rebuilt. I'm 30 now. I have my own house, a loving partner who sees me for who I am, and a chosen family of friends who celebrate my successes and support me through my failures. I learned that blood doesn't make a family. Love, respect, and mutual support do. Sometimes late at night, I wonder what would have happened if I just kept quiet, kept playing my role, kept being the invisible son who fixed everything. Then I remember the weight that lifted off my shoulders the day I said no, the peace that came with finally choosing myself. My parents always said I was different. They were right, I was different. I was the son who finally said enough.